welcome back to an Advance Wars by Web replay commentary. We have quite a few games this time, but let's start with this one. This map is called Celeste. We are playing on tier 1, but I went to choose Eagle because I'm not good with tier 1. Some of you may know this, but I'm not good at tier 1, so I went with a tier 2 CO. And my opponent picked Von Bolt. So Von Bolt's super isn't exactly strong, whereas my super, Lightning Strike, is way stronger. So my plan is to just stall out until I get my super, then win. So that was the plan going on this. Some of you may have seen this game before, but not in its entirety, but only the ending in my move planner and damage calculator video of how I demonstrated the use of the move planner to make sure you get the best turn you can make. But this video will talk about the rest of this game. So let's begin. Start off with our normal procedure of capturing our neutral base and our turn 1 properties. Nothing out of the ordinary. And yeah, just continuing our captures. When capturing our turn 1 properties, we do choose the property that is further away so that we can, or closer towards the center, so that we can continue capturing more. And then we choose to capture the properties in the back. He did skip his turn 1 property over here, but I suppose since he's playing aggressive, he probably wants to take the aggressive captures to deny me the properties, because if he doesn't, my Eagle Super will strike very hard. So I suppose it's fair to skip turn 1 property capture for that reason. He is going for a capture chain, so that's also another reason why you may want to skip turn 1. I personally just don't want to. So capture this property first, then this one, because this one can chain here and then here. And I tried to at least make an effort for this. I don't think I can take this property, but even if I don't, even if he gets close enough to stop me, I can always choose to go for this one instead. And I built a tank on my 2 base side because I want to pressure him on this side. He goes for his airport. I think I do the same actually. He goes for this property as well. And he also built a tank on his 2 base side, which it's a sign of I think it's a sign of a good player if you are willing to not try to match me up tank for tank over here, because on the 2 base against 1 base side, the 2 base side would typically eventually win, so you want to apply pressure on the other side, on where you are stronger. Some might argue the airport side is actually stronger because battlecopters, and in some cases it might actually be true, but I'm not so sure about this one because the airport is somewhat exposed and an anti-air is just 2 turns away from locking it down. But we will see. And since I want him to react by building a vehicle, so I immediately send my tank down to... I guess I didn't go for this turn 1 capture because I sent this infantry to do it instead. I even forgot about that. And I bring out an artillery because I do expect my opponent to be aggressive against Eagle, So artillery is good for defensive purposes. You can also use them offensively, but they're typically used for defensive purposes. He stops my property capture here. I think that's a good move. Just try to deny me as much income as possible. I place my artillery in a way that if his tanks attack either of these infantry, I can shoot on it. It can't target this one because it can only attack from this tile, which my artillery covers. And this is actually kind of a mistake on my end. I don't know why I went for this property instead of this one. For this property, I could use 2 turns to capture with this infantry, but instead it now has to travel 3 turns to reach this property. So it was a mistake on my end. Maybe I thought I was going to put another infantry that also takes 2 turns, but I should have just went for this one, then have this infantry capture the top property here. I'm getting the comm tower. This comm tower is mine anyway, so I go for the property for the income first. And I might as well take a shot at an infantry because he can't reach me. And I also built an artillery here. Just want to put pressure on my 2 base side to force a reaction. Anyway, the weakness with artillery is they can't move and attack on the same turn, so they're kind of vulnerable in this relatively open area here. But we are very close to my base, so any attack from my against my artillery will get first struck by something else. So I choose to get an infantry. I don't see why not. Okay, I guess I did build an infantry for that one. But I am moving more of my units to capture here rather than try to defend this side. I should focus on defending this side. I built a battlecopter. I like battlecopters. It increased my unit count without using a base, and it protects my artillery from his tank. Let's see. He built a mech. I suppose he wants to push my tank off this city. He's still keeping his tank on this property. I guess he doesn't want me to capture it anytime soon. Perfectly good move. Alright, I guess I don't remember what my reasoning was. This was a while back. But I suppose since I'm so close to my base and my artillery is in an okay position, I guess I did try to do this, or at least I tried to get him to send an infantry where I can get my unit count advantage up by trying to pick off anyone who tries to interrupt me. And I go for 2 tanks. So if he attacks my artillery, he will get first struck by 2 dings. So he has to either pull back or commit to it, I suppose. I mean, he does have 2 more vehicles of his own. And he does. His anti-air does cover his tank. So at this point, I look at this and I think, is there a way for me to attack with my battlecopter without losing it to the anti-air? Well, my first capture, of course. He built a battlecopter of his own, so my tank has to leave the city. And I decide to just go for a neutral property in the center instead. So I attack and block with my infantry. His anti-air can still reach this artillery, so, but I think it's fine. It's still one turn within my base. So I'm feeling pretty confident. I know that if I just stall long enough, I would eventually win. I mean, so far our exchange is a tank for damage on my artillery. Well, I also lost an infantry, but we don't need to talk about that. He gets a strike from a city, then continues attacking. Which we can debate how effective this attack is, but I think it's he kind of has to attack, otherwise the map will stall. And he's getting his battlecopter. I see him shifting it to his 2-base side, which is a pretty common thing in the higher levels plays. I also like to shift my battlecopter to my 2-base side, so it's almost as if I have 2 base and an airport against the 1 base side. Not really, but it's good enough. You're forcing them to use their 1 base to build an anti-air, and then your vehicles can focus on that anti-air. At least that's what we all hope to do. And he built another anti-air. He knows that this anti-air is probably dead. So right now we're pretty much traded 1 artillery for a tank, and then some shots with the tanks here. So first things first, I attack the anti-air. I don't like the anti-air, so then I could get a shot on another tank. I got the luck roll to kill that tank, so I'm still feeling confident, but I do want more battlecopters. I know this anti-air can hit it, but I know the value of battlecopters. As long as I have battlecopters on the field, my opponent is forced to respond with either battlecopters of his own or more anti-airs. And if he has to build anti-air, then I can get ahead in the tank game. At least that was my plan. So I am shifting some of my units to my weak side here. Typically, if you divide your forces to match your opponent evenly, the game tends to stall. And since he has 2 bases here, he will have more units, at least unless I reinforce it from my strong side. So I'm just slowly shifting, not necessarily to do anything, but just to stall out the game longer. Also moving my anti-air to shift alongside his battlecopter, just to keep watch. He goes for my battlecopter, which is expected. But the fact that my battlecopter is alive means that it's still very useful. He gets this property. I expected him to. He would eventually force me out of it anyway with this battlecopter. And he continues taking good shots against my infantry. Pretty much thinning out my defenses. I typically use infantry walls to protect my units, but he's clearing out my infantry so he can eventually strike my vehicles. Whereas I can't strike his vehicles because he has the infantry wall here. This is typically why 2 base sides are stronger than a 1 base. The extra infantry from the extra base is very useful to blocking your opponent's movements and denying them what they want. as well as just property captures. Finish off the anti-air, move my anti-air to continue following his battlecopter. It's out of range of his tanks, so that anti-air is safe. And similar to how he's shifting his battlecopter onto my one base side, I think I was planning to do the same over here, shifting it towards his one base side, where he doesn't have an anti-air. Maybe force him to build an anti-air there as well. And his anti-air isn't locking my airport anymore, so I can just build another one. I do expect him to get the property, but if he wants it, then we might exchange some infantry here. And if we do exchange infantry on a one-to-one basis on this side, I have way more infantry, so it will be advantageous for me. So I'm pretty much offering infantry and infantry trade every time we go into each other's artillery, if he accepts it. He captures the properties. He's now 3 properties ahead of me, but it's fine because I'm Eagle. With Von Bolt in one comm tower, that 20% damage boost does guarantee a kill from a tank on a property. So that's one of the that's one of the reasons why Von Bolt is tier 1. His day-to-day is pretty strong. The ability to wall break consistently is, I say, one of the strongest parts. Which is also why Hawk is pretty strong, despite his long power charge. And he's getting really close to my base. I see he wants to win right now before I get my super. Or maybe he just wants this property, I don't know. But we're so close to my base, I thought maybe there's something I can do here, because I have to do something. So I focus on taking out, well, like I said, he gets a property, but I get an infantry, and if he tries to, he can shoot my infantry, but it will survive, and if he sends another infantry, we can just repeat the cycle of sending infantry towards each other. Which is fine by me. So I was planning to shift it here. He has another battlecopter. I decided to just send it back here. There seems to be a lot of tanks I can get strikes on. I wanted to see if I can break through to the anti-air, but that's impossible. I wanted to see if I could. There's a lot of things I wanted to do, but these infantry and this 2 HP tank is still alive and blocking me off. This is why infantry is important. It blocks you off from your plans. And I thought, most of his tanks down here are gone. Well, yeah. I destroyed a tank, I softened up the other 2. I still have 2 tanks of my own and plenty of battlecopters. I can lose 1 battlecopter to the anti-air. I'm sure it's fine. It's just 1 battlecopter, and I can just build another one. He needs to respond with more anti-air, otherwise his attack is just shut down. So this is the argument of why sometimes the airport side is actually the strong side, is actually the stronger side, because if your opponent does not build adequate air defenses, they're not pushing here, and you can easily get a lot of free picks off their tanks. Well, perhaps not free, but it's definitely worth losing 1 battlecopter to destroy a tank army. And I say I'm holding the center pretty well. I think if he focused on these center properties, I would eventually have to give them up, because they're pretty close to both our bases. Like these, I would expect these, like this line here is the contested property line, maybe a little shifted for the bases. But I believe he could have won all 4 of these center bases if the focus had been here instead. but because I'm like one turn away from my airport and one turn away from my base, I think that's why I'm able to hold him off for so long. He gets the property. And he goes for my battlecopter. I mean, I suppose if he doesn't want to have to rely on anti-air, he will attack the battlecopter. But I typically prefer using battlecopters to hit tanks and have my tanks deal with the and have my anti-air deal with battlecopters. I mean, battlecopters do a lot of damage to other battlecopters, but just because it doesn't one-shot it, it makes that attack much less appealing if I have something else that can do that job. Both of us are nearing our power, so I decided not to pursue the anti-air and just sit on my properties defensively, not putting them too close together where his superpower can hit them all. And then I proceeded to ignore what I just said and put everything together over here. But I trusted he wouldn't get his superpower. Well, I was hoping for it. His artillery isn't covering the property anymore, so I thought I could try to take it. Simply because of my overwhelming number of infantry here. And my anti-air, it could have followed this battlecopter, but then I realized the value of stopping him from getting more, so I would just sit here and lock that airport down. Yeah, close enough so I can attack from both directions if I needed to. Well, if he blocks this one, I suppose I can't reach the other one anyway. Alright, so I pretty much formed a defensive line over here. Like an arc inviting him to attack if he wants to, where I can just sandwich him. But let's see what actually happens. I don't think he attacks that this turn. His tanks aren't really... This is the only tank that's in range of my vehicles. I guess this one can shoot that one, but it's not enough to get the super. He destroys my battlecopter. It's just 2 HP, I'm fine with that. And it gives me charge. I only need about 9,000 left to get my power. And we are reaching a position where I already explained in my move planner video how I was choosing my attack order for my Eagle Super. And if you watch that video, you already know how it goes out. I knew I can get my super, so I decided to go in for an attack. And just blow up as much stuff as possible. The battlecopter attacking the anti-air just to finish getting that charge. And then shifting my tanks from the 2 base side to my 1 base side just to do more damage. And I don't believe there's a way to come back from this. The fact that I got my superpower first this game, like right now, means that I will also get my super first before him the next time. Since he's not building any charge right now, and when he uses his super, I will start to gain my power again, whereas he's just going to be behind in the power charge. So at this point, he used his super, gets a pretty big portion, but I'm fine with it as long as it doesn't hit my bomber. That's all that matters. I don't want his I don't want his Neo tank to be relatively uncontested. And at this point, he just resigns. I think there was some kind of counterplay here. I mean, he does have 2 tanks and 2 artillery. He could just put his artillery to threaten my infantry wall, and then move in with his tanks after shooting at my infantry wall. I think it could have been broken eventually, and I would be denied both of these properties. But the fact that the game is stalling out and that I got my super first, that just means that I pretty much won, since the next when the next lightning strike comes, it will be even stronger than the first one, now that we both have plenty of units and the fact that I'm going to retake some properties. If I've been surviving this long behind on income, well, not that far behind, but it is behind. Uh, if I've been surviving this long behind on income at first and now I'm starting to capture them back, it's only going to be a matter of time before I win. So that's why the resignation was there. And that's the first game.